This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will call to order the July 16th meeting of the Board of Psychology Licensure Committee teleconference meeting. Could Mai please call the roll to establish a quorum? Mai, are you there? I see she's on mute.
This is the moderator. I can manually unmute her.
Okay.
She's been unmuted.
Okay.
Oh,
Shall I do the roll in place of her?
That would be great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Glass-Steagall.
No problem. Harm sheets?
Aye. Here.
Nystrom?
Here.
Kate?
Here.
Roll is complete.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, first, I would like to ask for public comment for items that are not on the agenda.
thank you, Madam Chairperson. I will go ahead and open up the Q&A panel, and any member of the public that would like to make a comment can type, "I would like to make a comment," using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is the moderator. I see no request for public comment at this time. Shall we close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please do.
It's closed.
Thank you. Okay, good morning to everyone, and I'm happy to welcome you to today's Licensure Committee meeting. I have a few logistical items I'd like us to cover. To please turn our cell phones and other devices to silent, and also to please mute your phone or computer unless you are speaking. We have allocated time for public comment for items not on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting, as we've just done. And additionally, we welcome public comments on any item on the agenda. And it's our intent to ask for public comments prior to taking action on any agenda item. Please be respectful of our time constraints and the need to conduct and complete the committee's business. If there are several items of the public seeking to comment on a particular agenda item, I will set a time limit on each speaker to ensure maximum participation by all in the context of a busy agenda. Public comments are instrumental to our hearings and add to the vibrant discussion on matters before the committee. If you're making a public comment, please do not identify any licensee or registrant of the board by name in order to avoid prejudicing future action that may be required of board members in our capacity as a deliberative body in enforcement proceedings. We will meet in open session as noted on the agenda, and then we'll move into closed session to discuss and consider qualifications for licensure. We will not be discussing any items in open session after the closed session of business concludes, except to adjourn the meeting. With those logistical items taken care of, we will move forward with our agenda. And the first item is the approval of the Licensure Committee meeting minutes from the January 7th, 2021 meeting. Does anyone have any comments or changes to those minutes?
I do not. This is Dr. Tate.
Okay.
And so I would like to move that we accept the minutes as written.
Okay. Second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any public comments?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I will open up the Q&A panel, and any member of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item may type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is the moderator. I see no request for public comment. Madam Chairperson, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, can we call the roll to vote on the motion before us approving the minutes?
Ortiz,
Aye.
Aye.
Did I miss something? This is Leah Tate. Did I miss my name?
Yeah, I think we're having a problem hearing. Madam Moderator, could you help us out with that?
Sure. So I saw through a chat that Mai was able to hear. She had
I was having problem earlier, but now my mic is working.
Okay.
Okay, so we're waiting for Dr. Tate's vote.
Which is great and
Oh, you did?
support. Yeah, we're great.
Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we would, Ms. Chung, could you give us an update on the waivers?
Yes, I'll be happy to. Thank you. Agenda item number 5 is about the waivers update. We have two kind of waivers. One is issued and maintained by the Department of Consumer Affairs, and it can be found on their website, which is provided, the link to the website is provided on the memo. And then the other type of waiver is issued by our board, and the link is also provided on the memo, which you can access them. So I'm gonna go through the waivers one by one, provided on the memo, as there are some changes happened since the day of the memo was written. The first memo is about extending time to satisfy examination requirements. It is a DCA issued waiver. It provides applications that are scheduled to expire between June 2nd, 2021 and August 1st, 2021, a one-time 6-month extension for candidates to take or retake an examination from the expiration date of their application date. The second waiver is the in-person face-to-face supervision. This is also a waiver issued by the department. This waiver has since been updated or extended from the date of the when the memo was written. So the waiver is now extended by the director on July 1st to be terminated on August 31st. The number of the new waiver is DCA 21-170 if you would like a reference. This information can also be found on our website in our FAQ, COVID-19 FAQ page. Additionally, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the changing nature of local indoor guidelines, so beginning on July 1st, 2021, the board is also providing a 6-month period to allow this 1-hour face-to-face direct individual supervision to be conducted via HIPAA-compliant video until January 1st, 2022. So trainee using this method of supervision should indicate the supervision was completed using HIPAA-compliant technology during COVID-19 pandemic in their weekly log. The next one is regarding a board-issued waiver for supervised professional experience regarding the time limitation. So this has been the same. This is for applicants who will be given an additional 6 months from the end date of their time limitation in accruing hours. And the next one is also a board issue waiver regarding psychological assistant registration limitation. The board has provided a 6-month to a psych assistant who will need more time regarding to remain on their registration. And if you need this extension, please do submit your extension request to us so that we can help you process your registration in a timely manner. The next one is about the extra time to complete continuing education requirements for license renewals. This is a waiver maintained by the department. So this is for a psychologist license whose license will be expiring between March 31st, 2021 and July 31st, 2021. The waiver allows them to complete their renewal related continuing education requirements by December 3rd. We also have another waiver that has been extended, is the reinstatement of inactive or canceled licensure. This waiver temporarily waived the continuing education and free requirement for individual who would like to restore their canceled psychologist license. The new waiver has been extended for them for the license to be expiring on September 1st instead of July 1st. The new waiver number for reference is DCA-21-165. And then the last waiver is a board psychology, is our board's waiver that is issued in supporting regarding the reinstatement of a licensure waiver just reported. This is the end of the update. Happy to answer any questions if you may have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, Madam Moderator, can we open the panel for public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment on this agenda item, please type. I would like to make a comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. This is a moderator. I see no request for public comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please do.
Okay, it's closed.
Okay. We will move on to item number 6, the licensing report. Mike, could you please walk us through the licensing report? And for committee members, if you could, as she does this, pay attention to any kind of additional information or perhaps clarifying information you would like to see in the future on this report.
Good morning, and I'm so sorry about earlier this morning about my mic. I hope everyone's doing well this morning. For the licensing report, attachment A, it lists the population of each license type, which includes psychologists, psychological assistants, and registered psychologists. When comparing each license type population to the previous licensing report that was presented at the May board meeting, there has been an increase to the psychologist population and a slight decrease in the population for psychological assistants and registered psychologists. As you can see, the total number of all license type is 6,540. From the previous report, the total number of all license type was 60,251. So overall, there is an increase in the total of population. In attachment B, it shows the workload report for each license type. For psychologists, there is an increased trend in the initial application for psychology licensure. For both approved and open application. We have a slight decrease trend for change of supervisor requests for psychological assistants. And for registered psychologists, we have 7 open application in May, which is normally higher than what we typically see each month. For attachment C, it shows the application and notification received in a 12-month time frame from June 2020 to May 2021. From the data, there are no noticeable changes when compared to the same time frame from last year for psychologists and registered psychologists. However, there has been an increased trend for psychological assistant for application and notification for April and May of this year. And then attachment D is the exam statistic, and there is no noticeable change when compared to the last reported data. Stephanie will continue with the licensing unit update.
Okay.
For now, I'm not sure if Stephanie wanna take on the stage or
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I wasn't sure. I should stop for questions. Okay, thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mike, for the report. I would like to share some additional information regarding updates that we had done. So the first one is a Breeze update. So on June 16, 2021, we have added an enhanced functionality in the Breeze system to let licensure applicants to view their application status and deficiency when they log on to their Breeze profile. So we hope that this enhancement will become an additional method to communicate with our licensure applicants, and we anticipate this new feature will be able to get more information out as an additional way to our licensure applicants for them to check their status when they log into their Breeze profile. And in addition, we continue to look at the possibility to increase our online and electronic capacity. So we are looking into making our CAPLE, which is a law ethics exam request application, and the request for initial licensure to become available for submission directly through Breeze. So we have some initial discussion with the Breeze team regarding this enhancement, and we'll include this in our future prioritization for all the enhancement after we have made the necessary configuration for this functionality. The second thing would be regarding the projects on hold that we have previously reported at the January 2021 licensure committee meeting. Due to limiting staffing resources, the informational resources for supervisor stakeholders will still be on hold, and I'm sorry, the information resources for supervisors FAQ resources will still be on hold, and then co-hosting the stakeholder meeting regarding to inform consumers regarding the respective roles of a licensed psychologist, licensed educational psychologist, and individuals holding a credential with a specialization in school psychology will still be on hold as well. We have heard the previous comments and concerns from the public. So once the budget is right-sized, we'll ask for the authority to add positions, hopefully to help with our processing timeline and the projects that are continue to be on hold. And the last but not least would be we, as Dr. Hopshis previously mentioned, we are asking feedback from the committee members to evaluate the report and let us know if there's any feedback provide to us regarding any necessary changes that you may wish to see regarding this report. And that's it for our licensing report, and available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chung. I have a couple of questions or just comments on the attachment A. When we have the section on enforcement and we list how many licenses have been surrendered and revoked, I wonder on the revoked, does that include revoked and stayed? The revocation is stayed, or are these? I'm wondering if we could clarify how many have been revoked with no stay, and how many of those are revoked and stayed?
Yes, we can look into this status code and see if there's a way for us to further separate them out, and we can take note of that and provide a report at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
You were discussing the project that was on hold regarding the potential confusion in the public between educational psychologists, licensed psychologists. And would it be appropriate for you to mention SB 801 and how some of that may be impacted by the term educational psychologist and the licensing as related to that? I guess I should ask Mr. McGuire. Is it appropriate for Ms. Chung to share with us a little bit of something we might be aware of regarding SB 801 and that issue?
Yeah, it's appropriate for her to share whatever information she has. I mean, the committee rather is not taking any action regarding that here today, but we can certainly talk about it.
Yeah, I was hoping that just to inform the committee members of that additional piece of information.
Yes. So for regarding SB 801, I think you are thinking of the proposed amendments in the language regarding the qualifying degrees.
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. So yes, in the SB 801, it listed the degrees that will qualify for licensure, which includes school psychology among other degrees that will be qualifying for licensure. And the proposed amendments will make specific which degrees applicants holding will qualify. So I think that is the information that you would want me to share.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you. I think that it's just something for committee members to be aware of, that currently a degree in school psychology does not qualify for psychology licensure, and but it usually those people would apply for licensure with the Board of Behavioral Science. However, if SB 801 passes, that change happens. We may see people with school psychology degrees, for example, applying for licensure. And so in terms of how the public perception is that some of those people who are school psychologists will have licenses through the Board of Psychology and some with the Board of Behavioral Science. So I thought it was important just for us to consider as we begin down the road to look at the informational piece, that project of trying to help the public be clear on what people in school psychology roles can do. Does that help committee members? Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So let's talk a bit about, as we look at the reports, I mentioned one thing on attachment A, a clarification. Dr. Tate and Ms. Nystrom, do you have other thoughts about what feedback we would like to give the board regarding any changes we would want to see to the licensing report? To the licensing report, to help in a better understanding of what's going on.
I have maybe a suggestion or a question, and it may be too unwieldy with the staffing issues, But Ms. Chung mentioned that in her narrative that they've been listening and they're trying to react to licensees' questions during this difficult time. I'm wondering, is there a way to capture what people are calling in about? And I can use the word complaining about, but is there a way to capture what are people calling in about regarding licensing that they're having problems with? Is there a way to capture that so we actually are responding to the needs?
To capture that, I think it would be more feasible if it's through emails, because then we can go back through and sort the large amount of inquiries that we receive, kind of categorize them. But we also receive a high number of phone calls, and phone calls might be more difficult to track because they happen very fast, and then there's not a mechanism for us to record or capture what kind of inquiries are coming in that way.
Okay, I figured, I know it's unwieldy, but what you said kind of just triggered with me, we're trying to respond to the licensees and we need to know what they're complaining about, but I know it's hard to track that information, but thank you.
Would it help? Well, I have a couple of thoughts, just maybe to kind of survey sort of anecdotally, what are some of your staff members experiencing in the phone calls that they're getting, or looking at the email, just from an anecdotal perspective. This is generally what we're seeing, not necessarily in a report.
From the top of my head, the most asked question is about statuses of their application.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that's why we thought of a way that to enable them to be able to check the statuses without having to come to us, so that's something in control for them, so that they can log into the Breeze profile and look there. So that would be the big thing, or like the most frequently asked questions that come across.
Yeah,
Is the app status. Mm-hmm.
Ms. Chung, this is Ms. Nystrom. Can I ask a follow-up on that? Can you help us better understand exactly what a licensee would see when they log into the Breeze? Does it say it's just pending, or does it give like an actual status update? Or is it a defined step in the licensing process?
maybe missing documents might be listed. I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Yes, so some things, information like that as well. So when they log into the profile, they will be seeing what kind of deficiencies or like missing documents that they may need, if it's a pending status. So they will be, because we are continuing to communicate through email once a review is complete. So they will be getting the similar information on their Breeze profile and through email, but the Breeze profile, they will see the types of information that we're requesting, and then what is missing, or if if it's approved or pending. So it's information like that. So it's like a summary of what is happening with their application once a review happened.
Does it give them any kind of sense of how much longer? I know you can't really commit to how much longer it will take to process the application, but does it give them any sense of how much more time may take?
So in that regards, we will have to refer them back to our monthly update on the application processing timeframes, because we cannot project when one piece of document will be processed because we are processing according to the date order that they received. And then each piece of document is different. It varies based on the quality and quantity we receive at that time. So it's really hard to project a time frame to say that to commit a time that we will be able to processing within a day or 2 days or like weeks, because that would just give a false sense of information of the expectation regarding the that they will be receiving a feedback.
Yeah, I could see too much out of your control.
And then Ms. Chung, just one other question on that. Is Breeze able to do an automatic, like an automatic notification to the licensee or the license applicant to say, yes, this document was input, or this document is pending, or if their status changes from one case to another, to automatically notify?
That's a good thought. We're not sure if the system is capable, but we can definitely reach out to the Breeze team regarding if this can be a functionality within the system. And additionally, because we allow application materials to be mailed, or some are required to be mailed to us, so that part would be more of a manual human intervention regarding the notification process. And based on because we're kind of constrained with the resource right now, so we aren't able to provide a notification per se regarding what any piece of document received. But we can definitely reach out to the Breeze team and and ask about the possibility of having some automatic notification when certain documents are being submitted or a certain status are being changed.
Great. I have a question on attachment C. When the part that talks about 519 notifications received, I just want to remember again, those notifications are, say, supervisor information, or can you just tell us again what kinds of notifications are comprised in that number 519?
Absolutely. This number, the notification is about for a psychological assistant when they would like to change primary supervisor, or if they're changing a location of where they will be providing services, or they're adding a new location or new primary supervisor to be associated with their application, with their registration, I'm sorry.
Okay. You know what I keep wondering about that might be helpful information is, and I don't know that in general processing time information, ways of processing time at any point in time. I think these are questions that we get. Obviously the question from an applicant is going to be, why is it taking so long? But, and there's so much I know that is not in your staff's control, like waiting for documents. But would it be helpful to kind of give the board that kind of information? Like currently, this part of the process takes this long, and that part has been just on average, not, recognizing all the things that reflects things in your control and not in your control. What about Dr. Tate and Ms. Nystrom? Do you have thoughts on that? Would that be helpful, do you think, for the board members to know?
This is the session. I think generally having an idea of how long the processing time is could be a helpful piece, and recognizing that not every license processes thing, but just kind of a general guideline of what time is would be great.
I agree. I was just thinking about it because we're having some staffing issues. So, to try and be as accurate as possible would be the best if we're going to go that route.
So if maybe we could share with the board some kind of report that shares processing time kind of moving forward for that particular period of time. What do you think, Ms. Chang, what do you think about that?
Yeah, we can provide some information regarding that. Previously, in the previous version of this licensing report, we provided the application processing timeframes on the oldest date of the documents that we're processing. We have retired that report format because it was not constructive information to the board, but we can definitely add that in at our next report for the board.
Well, let's try it. It might be helpful, at least temporarily, since there have been enough public comments or questions about processing time, and you might. I'm not sure if you can get this information, but through the Breeze system, are you able to see how many people are accessing that newly added part that gives information, or how many times it's accessed?
Good question. I'm not sure about that answer, but I can definitely go back and have a discussion with Bree's team and ask about this question and get back to you.
Okay. I have one more question or thought on attachment D, the exam statistics. And, you guys present to us the pass rates and number of candidates. It might be interesting to see when the national average on EPPP. So on first time passed and percent percent passed overall in the month of June, let's say, that's what we have, and percent of first time passed national statistics. I think that would be useful to compare our California numbers. Also, Ms. Nystrom, Dr. Tate, does that sound helpful?
This is Ms. Nystrom. I think that would be that would also be helpful. I was also curious with respect to the pass. For those who do not pass, and I'm just curious if we've ever done this at the board, but have you ever surveyed those who haven't passed to get an idea of what some of the hiccups are from their perspective of not being able to pass?
I don't believe we are able to access that data, and I don't remember we have surveyed them. But I'll defer to Mr. Glass-Steagall if he might have more information regarding the exam aspect. But my best recollection is we haven't surveyed them previously.
Hi, good morning. This is Jason. I don't believe we have either.
Mm-hmm. It might be information that ASPPB has.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Was somebody trying to say something? Okay, I guess not. Before we move on, I wanted to first see if committee members, you have any other comments, questions, additions you might like to suggest to the board regarding these reports.
No, it'll be nice to add the new information and see where we go from there.
Okay. We
Sounds
make
good
it.
as well. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Madam Moderator, could you please open the comment box for public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment on this agenda item, please type. I would like to make a comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. And we do have a member of the public that would like to make a comment. Colleen Kennedy. So Colleen, I'll let you know when you've been unmuted. All right, Colleen, you've been unmuted.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to be part of your meeting. I have a comment and a question, but before I get to my comment and question, just from hearing the discussion that you've had, I had a couple of extra comments. First of all, Ms. Chang, I'm really glad to hear that the process of getting licensed is becoming easier and more efficient through Breeze. I think that that's really important. I think sending everything through snail mail, and waiting to get up to you just adds time onto the licensure process. So I was really happy to hear that you guys are making progress on efficiency. And also, just in terms of the time frames, I know you were talking about licensees. So I'm just newly licensed, so I've just come through the process. And on your website, the time frames are not always current for processing times. So that's just something that I think would be really helpful for applicants if that was really kept up every week so that we know what the actual time frames are for processing things. So moving on to sort of my comment, I've been recently licensed and I've been to several board meetings this year, and I brought up the issue of communication throughout my licensing process. The communication was really horrible, or lack thereof. It took me almost an extra year to become licensed because I wasn't being informed of critical information that I needed to move forward in the licensing process. So I've brought that to your attention in a couple of different meetings, but I'm still having difficulty, even as I finished up this licensing process, having questions answered. And so I reached out to my analyst on May 24th with a question regarding the fingerprinting. A month went by, I hadn't heard from him, so I reached out to him again. And he did get back to me, but he never answered my question. So then, Ms. Chang, I reached out to you on June 29th, and I asked you the same question, but I didn't hear back from you either. So my comment is really the communication is really important and really is slowing applicants down. And I think that's a place for the staff of the licensing committee to make improvements. And so I still wanted to ask my question, and my question really revolves around the fingerprinting issue. So I had been a psych assistant and submitted my live scan fingerprints. And then at the very end of the licensing process, I was told that I needed to have my fingerprints done again. And so I wasn't sure why we need to be re-fingerprinted from being a psych assistant to being a licensed psychologist. I know that was long, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
That question. This is Antoinette Sorek. This is something the board has been doing for quite some time. One thing that the fingerprint process does not account for is that it's just a snapshot in time for an FBI fingerprint. So that is why we have folks reprint when they apply for a different kind of license or registration. We get subsequent arrest or conviction notification through the Department of Justice for any California violations, but we wouldn't if something happened in another state. So that is why we do fingerprints more than once, because if, let's say, an applicant were to go to Florida, had a DUI, We would not be notified of that if we had printed that person 5 years ago as if for the registration as a psychological assistant. So that's why we print more than once, and I'm hoping that answers your question. We were hoping that there's a program called Ratback, which would be for the FBI a similar subsequent arrest or conviction notification that we have with the Department of Justice now. But as of right now, California is not in the Ratback program. So in lieu of that, we have to have people fingerprint more than once. So that's the reasoning for that.
Thank you, Ms. Sorek. And Dr. Kennedy, I hear what you're saying, that it feels important to have especially timely and accurate information available to applicants. And we've definitely acknowledged that and have been working on trying to make responsiveness and accurate responsiveness a goal. Thank you for making your comments. Okay.
All right, this is the moderator, and we have a Cindy Bradbury that would like to make a comment. So Cindy, you have been unmuted.
Thank you. And my comment pertains to the discussion about obtaining additional information concerning pass rates on the EPPP. I just would like to suggest that it might also be helpful in obtaining that information to get a breakdown on pass rates as far as gender, diversity, gender, race, and ethnicity are concerned, because certainly nationally there is evidence of considerable disparities, and it would be helpful to know how California compares to the national rate, perhaps to inform how might be able to move forward more effectively as a field.
Ms. Sork, do we have that information? I know that we only collect limited demographic information, but of course, EPPP is an ASPPB exam. Do you know how available that information is? Are we able to, was Ms. Sork?
I believe Dr. Horn is on the line, and if the moderator can open up the Q&A panel, she might be able to speak to the availability of what kind of data is available for pass rates for EPPP. And I hate to put Dr. Horn on the spot if that information is not available, but would like to invite her to comment if she would like to comment on that item.
All right, this is the moderator, and Dr. Horn, I'm going to unmute you. All right, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks. I will tell you that the information is national statistics or pass rates are available through ASPPB, and they're actually presented at every board meeting, every open board meeting that ASPPB has, which are 6 a year. So that's easy to get, and I would contact Matt Turner, and he can get you that information for you. The breakdown that ASPPB gathers the information from is only large pass rates and not by specific groups. So I'm sorry that information isn't available. People do answer questions about that, and if there are questions on the EPPP that are answered differentially by different groups, those questions are reviewed and by an extra group of diversity experts to ensure that they're not biased questions, and if they are, if they're found to be biased, they never appear on the exam after the pretest. But that's kind of a long answer, but that information otherwise isn't available.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Horn. That helps us, and I think it's an important aspect for us to look at. And Ms. Chung, perhaps you and I could talk about how we might look at that information.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right, we have a request for comment from a Dr. Trista Carr. So Trista, I will let you know when you've been unmuted. All right, Dr. Carr, you have been unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you all once again for allowing us to pipe in here and ask our questions. I was curious about the AB 801 and talking about that licensure for school psychologists. I can see that as being problematic in some ways for the public in terms of public perception if they are licensed by the Board of Psychology. So I just wanted to find out what degrees exactly are going to be the ones that will be allowed to be licensed by the Board of Psychology.
Well, I'll ask Ms. Sorek or Ms. Chung to comment on that. We could perhaps discuss, we could state what is in the current regulation, and if SB 801 does pass, how that might change. So Ms. Sorek, would you like to respond to that?
I can pull up the, I have the bill pulled up. So it's SB 801 and the author is Archuleta. And the section that we're talking about is Business and Professions Code section 2913. And the different types of degrees that are going to be allowable are psychology with the field of specialization in clinical counseling, school consulting, forensic, industrial, or organizational psychology, or education with the field of specialization in educational psychology, counseling psychology, or school psychology. So those are the different degrees that we will be looking at or for when reviewing applications for licensure. And at the end of the day, if for some reason the applicant doesn't fit neatly in one of those categories, it is up to the board to make the final determination as to whether that degree meets the requirements of that particular subdivision of 2913. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that is what is relayed in the bill.
And those are doctoral degrees. I see Dr. Carr is asking if they're master's level. They are doctoral degrees.
Correct.
Yeah. Does that help, Dr. Carr?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
If they're a registered psychological associate, they need to have completed a master's degree in those areas that I mentioned. That's in 2913. And then 2914 is for psychologists in particular, and that lays out the same degrees with the field of specialization in counseling psychology, educational psychology, or school psychology, and then the field of specializations that were listed in the prior section 2913 that relates to registered psychological associates. Sorry for the confusion.
And so that basically expands the degrees that will be eligible for licensure as a psychologist by the Board of Psychology. And we have recognized, Dr. Carr, that yes, this could be confusing to the public, and this is a project that we have on hold right now, but will take up as we are able to make sure that the public is aware of these different licenses and what people with these different degrees can do.
All right, this is the moderator. I see no further requests for public comment. Madam Chairperson, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please do.
Okay, it's closed.
Okay. I think something just came in just as you were closing it. I saw something pop up.
Okay, I'll open it back up real quick and
Okay.
yes. So
Oh, I see the question. Would the board consider a licensing caveat specifically for clinical psychologists? That's a good question, and that has not come up, but it's something to think about. I'm thinking, Dr. Carr, that you're wondering, will that make it clearer for the public? And it's something definitely to think about. Thank you. Okay. Madam Moderator, if you would like to close the public comment again.
Thank you. It's closed.
Okay. All right, let us move on to item number 7, the continuing education and renewals report. Ms. McCochran.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm going to give you an update on the continuing education side. Audits for January 2020 through August 2020 have been sent out, and the due dates have passed. The current pass rate is 55%, and 37% of audits are still pending. For renewals between January 2021 through June to 2021, 88% of psychologists renewed as active. That is a significant jump from the past 2 years. In 2019, we had 78% renew as active, and in 2020, we had 80%. And then about 90% of psychologists and psychological assistants renewed their license online using Breeze. That also is a huge jump. So in an effort to reduce the board's carbon footprint, in January 2020, the board went paper-led for all license and registration renewals. So in 2020, we had 81% sending in or using Breeze. And then the pass rate from 2015 to 2019 has been consistently over 80%, and the pass rate for second audits has risen from 68% in 2016 to 94% in 2019. So that's the end of my update, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, so committee members, questions, and also if you have suggestions for us to share with the board regarding the reports and anything that might make them easier to understand or additional information, please share those too.
This is Dr. Tate. I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, Ms. Nystrom?
No questions here either. Thank you.
Okay, and Ms. McCochran, could you share with us when people are, as I understand, are given a significant amount of time to provide the information when they are selected for audit? And 2 questions I have. One is, are all people who are in the enforcement process regularly also audited? Is that part of the enforcement process? And then the second question is, do you have any sense of what is happening? Can you clarify for us when people do not pass the audit, what are the main reasons?
Sure. So for the enforcement process, I audit probationers, and I audit those who've already received a CE citation. And the probationers are audited for every year or for every renewal they're on probation. And then for those who had a CE citation, they're audited in the next renewal cycle. And if they pass that, then they won't be audited anymore.
Okay.
And then when people do not pass, the main reason is that they're just short hours. So it could be out of the 36 hour, they don't meet the 36-hour requirement.
Okay. So I'm looking at the number of licensees selected for audit, and I can't remember what the percent of are these random selections. So the 25 represents what percent of is it renewals or just at any point in time? Could you just remind me, please?
Oh, sorry, which attachment are you on?
It is attachment A, and it says total number of licensees selected for audit. So the numbers are basically in the 20s. Some, June was 31. That's what percent of, is it just of psychologists at any particular month, or how does that work?
Right, that is a 2.5% of the total renewing psychologists that month.
Okay, so renewing that month. And okay. So committee members, do you think it would be helpful for the board to know, so if for example, in January, there were 25 people selected of renewing psychologists, I'm assuming then that we don't see, excuse me, probationers or people who have failed cite and fine, people, we don't see those people, what we see from before. Is that correct, Ms. McCochran, that we don't see those people and how they're doing? This is just the general population?
No, this is including the probationers and those who have second audits. So attachment, I don't have an attachment for probationers, but attachments, I believe, sorry, attachment E.
Okay.
The pass and fail rate for second audit. So that's in 2019. I haven't given the numbers yet for the 2020, this current one.
Yeah. So, Ms. Nystrom and Dr. Tate, do you feel, since these numbers that we see, total number of licensees includes probationers, would it be helpful to have that information broken out into a separate report? How many were probationers and how many were just the general population of renewing psychologists?
This is Dr. Tate. I don't know if that information needs to be broken out. I'm trying to think of how it might be helpful. I don't know. I'm curious to see what Ms. Nystrom thinks.
This is Ms. Nystrom. I think I'm still trying to wrap my head around the process for continuing education, and it just seems like the board spends an awful lot of time verifying information, when I feel like there should be a better automated process to be able to do that. And so I think that's kind of where my pause is I feel like, I don't know, I think I'm not sure if that would be beneficial or not. Certainly just don't want to create more work, but want to better understand maybe some of the hiccups and, making sure that our professionals are, doing the continuing education that they need for the safety of their clients.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a pretty manual process. Is that correct, Ms. McCochran?
Yes, yeah. So the process of it, I send out the notices and they have to send back their 36 hours, they're verifying of CE, and then I have to go through them individually and ensure that they're meeting their CE requirements.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
It's important. I mean, I wondered, going back to the Breeze, if there's a way for Breeze to be able to help with some of that, but perhaps I think maybe I just don't understand the system.
We basically send in these certificates, Ms. Nystrom, that show that the program has been by an approved provider and for X number of credits. And so I'm not, unless there was a system where it was like credentials banking, like perhaps CPA offers that service. But other than that, I'm not sure how to automate it. So it would be wonderful if it was for everybody.
Sure.
Yeah. So, well, perhaps we could present to the board to see the idea of how many what percent of these people being audited are probationers, and how are those numbers compared? It would just be, I think, could be useful because they're being monitored, but the rest of the population, I would like to know if the renewal population is, if their numbers are different. I think it could be helpful, but we could present that and see how the rest of the board feels. So, any other comments from committee members?
None for me. Thank you.
Okay.
Then here, I thank you.
Okay, could we please, Madam Moderator, open up for public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on this item, please type. I would like to make a comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, we have a couple of comment requests already. Elizabeth Winkleman, I believe it's Dr. Winkleman. I will let you know when you've been unmuted. All right, Dr. Winkleman, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. This is Dr. Elizabeth Winkleman from the California Psychological Association. I have a comment and then a question. My comment is that, of course, when the continuing professional development requirements do go into effect, then it's going to be a lot more complicated. So it would be good to think about going forward how to improve the clarity with documentation and monitoring for that. But so that's my comment. My question is I'm hoping maybe you can clarify on the chart the difference between who's pending and deficient versus who's failed. And then what are the consequences? Let's say the majority of people, they have one CE that didn't count or something. And what are the consequences if someone, for example, is missing 2 hours and then they correct it right away? Thank you.
Ms. Sork, would you like to respond to that?
So I will just say, and I will invite Mr. McGuire to chime in if I miss anything. But right now, we don't have citations for continuing professional development or CE in our disciplinary guidelines. So there isn't a set range for this number of hours gets this amount, this number of hours gets that amount. We have a general guideline, but it really is case by case on the hours, the timing, and any mitigating factors that go into the deficiency. So it's unfortunately not a real black and white answer that I can give on that. I can say that we have been very fair, I think, with licensees on working with them if there are extenuating circumstances or if something did not get to them, if there was a wrong address or email address. We have been very open in communicating with the licensee as part of that process. I will invite Mr. McGuire to add anything else on the citation amount or whatever administrative decision would come out of that situation? And then I will ask Ms. McCochran if there's anything else she would like to add to that.
This is Mr. McGuire, Board Counsel. I don't have much to add other than I think everything Ms. Hork said is correct. And personally, I'm generally only involved at the back end of these citations. And I know staff works with the Deputy Attorney General's office on some of these matters. But from what I know, there are regulations. I'd have to go look and see what they say regarding the amount and some of the factors to be considered when setting the amount. So I know board staff does look at those factors, like seriousness of the violation, how long it's, whether this is a repeat or a first-time violation, how long it's been since the violation occurred, or other misconduct that's happened, things of that nature. We can pull it up at a later time if you wish, or you can go look up in our regulations regarding the amount of citations.
Okay, Ms. McCochran.
I just wanted to answer the question you had regarding the attachment about the pending and deficient versus the failed. So the pending and deficient, those ones are those who've sent in their audits. Well, the pending is those who've sent in their audits, and then I just haven't gotten around to reviewing them just yet. So those are considered pending. And then the deficients are the ones who they may be short a couple hours, and I'm giving them, they're given sufficient amount of time to correct that deficiency. And then the failed are those that they just haven't responded, or they did not meet the CE requirement of 36 hours.
So if someone sent in on the renewal certifying that they had the hours, and in your review determined that instead of 36, they actually had 34 that qualified, you would give them some time to pick up those extra 2 without being referred to the Cite and Fine program. Is that correct?
Yeah, so they would have to, it would still have to be within their renewal cycle, but this is where it gets a little confusing, because right now there's the waiver. So these people currently being audited, they have until December 3rd to complete their continuing education. So right now, yes, so if they're found, the people from January to August, if they're found deficient, they have until December 3rd to make up those hours and send them back to the board.
Okay.
So this is Ms. Nystrom. I have a follow-up question on that. So if I have sent in my continuing education certificates and your process ending, what can you help me understand that timeline? So, because I just want to make sure that applicants aren't penalized because maybe they're short, don't realize they're short, submitted their information, but it's pending, and then all of a sudden they're running up on their deadline. Does that make sense? Or am I confused?
Yeah, so even if it's, let's say, they're past the deadline, and then that's when I get to audit their CEs, they'll still be given time, extra time to correct that deficiency.
Okay, and then just for my edification, how much time do you give them?
They get a total of 60 days.
Okay, thank you.
I was just going to ask Ms. McCochran if you could just lay out briefly what the steps are in the citation process. I think we've probably gone over this before, but I don't think it would be bad to kind of go over that with the audience we have today. You know, what happens when you send out the contact letter, you send out the follow-up. What is the timing for each of those steps, and what does that look like, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. So once they sent out the contact letter, they're given 60 days from that day, the letter is sent out via mail and email. They'll be sent out a 30-day reminder via mail and email. And then, just as Ms. Nystrom asked, even if they sent in their documents after the deadline, they're still given time to make up their any deficiencies. If there is no response from them, they are referred to the enforcement unit. And then if they're found to be deficient and they do not have hours within the renewal cycle being audited, a continuing education citation will be issued. And for that, with the citations, you are also given a chance to appeal the citation as well.
So perhaps in an appeal, somebody might cite some extenuating factors. Is that correct?
Correct, yes. So go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. When finish your thought, I just had one thing to add toward the end. Thanks.
Oh yeah, I was just saying that was just a case-by-case basis as well. So that's the time when the licensee can give any extenuating factors of why they fail to meet the requirement.
Mr. McGuire?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to follow up on my previous comment. While we were talking, I looked up if anyone's interested, the particular regulatory citation that talks about amount of fines for Board of Psychology, and it is 16 CCR 1397.51 for those keeping score at home.
Okay. Thank you.
And this is Ms. Nystrom. I'm sorry, I just have one more question. Is Breeze used at all to update the licensees on the status of their Cs?
No, unfortunately, Breeze is not set up to do that.
Dr. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. They can update when you renew your license. You are able to upload your CE documentation to Breeze, but they aren't able to see the status of if they were selected for an audit, they're not able to see the status.
Okay. And then the public, though, if they were looking at a licensee, they wouldn't be able to tell if like the continuing education's requirements have been completed or not either. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
But the public would have access to a citation if there was a citation issued. And like any other citation with the board, we have citations on our website for 5 years, and that's in our business and professions code as well.
Thank you for clarifying.
Dr. Winkleman, did you get your questions answered?
I did. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sheets.
Dr. Linda Crow.
All right, let me, Dr. Linda Crow, you've been unmuted.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I guess there's some advantage. I'm Jo Linda Crow, I'm the CEO of the California Psychological Association. I guess there's some advantage to have been in my position as long as I have. But to Ms. Nystrom's question, in case there are people on the phone that don't know this, CPA, the California Psychological Association, for many years managed the program for continuing education requirements. It was called the MCEP, the Mandatory Continuing Education Program, which we managed the keeping of the records from the time that the program was first put in place until I'm forgetting now exactly how many years ago, but when the Board of Psychology decided to take this program back in-house and begin the audit process. So it is a complicated process. We did have an automated way of handling it within our office. We had special scanning software and so forth. But I empathize with the complexity of managing this, especially with the audit. Regarding the audit, I do think that we hear from from some of our members and your licensees that the fact that there is not a consistently applied, I believe this is what you're saying, not a consistently applied fine or penalty creates a bit of confusion for people, and also, can lead to a perception that it's not as equitable as it could be. I don't know if there's a way to work toward a more consistent response to people who haven't met their CE requirements. But I will just mention that. And I want to be sure that I'm understanding that, in fact, it's handled on a case-by-case basis, and there's no, I think, Ms. Sorek, you said there's some guidelines, but we do hear from people say, well, I only needed 2 credits and I got fined this much, and somebody else I know, anecdotally, got fined less than I did, and they were many credits short or short. So I just want to be sure that I'm understanding that in fact it's not consistent, and it's not something that people can see. That's the other thing. Can people see what the penalties will be if they don't meet their CE requirements?
I'll try and start to answer this, and then if Mr. McGuire or Ms. McCochran would like to add on any information. We have a range between $100 and $2,500 that is authorized in statute and supported in regulation for our citation authority. Beyond that, it really depends on the situation. As Ms. McCochran, I think, mentioned, if someone has, or Mr. McGuire mentioned, if someone has failed a CE audit in the past, if they're a probationer that failed the CE audit, there are several mitigating factors, and I would hate to, not give the individual licensee the opportunity to present and have their individual scenario considered when that citation fee is levied in that citation. And there always is the opportunity for an informal conference where it's discussed with the licensee. They can also have a hearing if they would like to request a hearing with an administrative law judge. That's always another option. I like to think I'm a pretty easy person to talk to, and I like to think of myself as pretty fair when considering mitigating circumstances, but the range is really, like I said, $100 to $2,500, but it really depends on if this person has failed in the past already, if they didn't communicate with the staff at all. So we couldn't just black and white say, you were short 2 hours, so this is going to be the amount, without looking at the other factors. I don't think that would be a responsible decision for our agency to make. But that's just my perspective, and I'm happy to hand it over to Mr. McGuire or Ms. McCochran to add on to that.
Do either Mr. McGuire or Ms. McCochran have anything you would like to add?
No, that sums it up.
I think Ms. Sorek did describe it well. I would note that the section of code that regulation that I cited previously, 16 CCR 139, sorry, let me go back and get through the exact number, because you might review that and it might be helpful toward looking at the factors, because it's not just she mentioned it's a case-by-case basis, and that's accurate, because each, we have to look at each situation on its own relative to the factors, but it's not that the board and board staff are just, each time just reinventing the wheel. They are looking at 16 CCR 1397.51, which cross-references to BMP code 125.9, which is a more general DCA-wide statute for fine amounts. So if you review those sections, you may get some more insight. But it's fair to say that it is a case-by-case basis that is informed by regulation and statutory factors. So and she mentioned the amounts going up to $2,500. I would just point out that in the case of someone who's a repeat offender with more than 2 of the same type of violation, it can actually go up to $5,000. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Dr. Linda Crow, did you have anything else you would like to add or any other questions?
No, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. We have another public comment. Madam Moderator, could you unmute that member of the public?
Of course. So Marilyn Emosh, you have been unmuted.
Thank you. I just had a question. I am kind of the go-to person from CDCR, as you know, for information regarding license renewals and audits. It's a very concerning area for many people, although most of them, we are APA accredited for our continuing education courses that are relevant and appropriate. And we've had accreditation for many years. So we offer a lot of coursework, and that's good for our people, but they're still nervous because there's just a lot of angst around this. Some of them have signed up for the CPA CE banking, which calms people's nerves to a certain extent. But could you just kind of give an overview of the procedure that you go through when you audit somebody who has CE banking from CPA?
Ms. McCochran, could you please do that?
Sure. So when someone is a member of CPA and they are utilizing their CE banking service, when I send that licensee the letter notifying them of their continuing education audit, they'll usually contact CPA, and sometimes I get it directly from the licensee, and sometimes CPA will send it directly to me. They'll send me all 36 hours or all their certificates that they have.
So is the process then similar, that there's a manual process of you going through those certificates, or do you, I'm not sure with the CPA banking service, do they perhaps certify those prior to them coming to you, Ms. McCochran, and then you accept that certification without having to go through the certificates? How does that work?
So I still review the certificates. I'm not sure. I think Dr. Linda Crow can ask or answer the question as what CPA does and how they audit. But with the certificates I receive, I still go through to verify that they are accredited and they have the certain amount of hours, and then they meet that certain requirements, such as the suicide requirement is currently a CE requirement. So I still go through them and audit.
Thank you. Dr. Linda Crow, would you like to add to that? To maybe share what CPA does on their end that they can provide?
Yeah, sure. So this is a service where CPA members who subscribe to the CE Bank can send their CE certificates to us, and we scan them and we keep them in their file, so that when they are audited, they can then contact us and say, I'm being audited, can you please send my certificates to the Board of Psychology? Now, one of the things that we do when they send in the certificates is that my staff looks at them, and if there are any that don't have the right, maybe they have a letter instead of a CE certificate from an APA approved provider, anything that looks like it might not be accepted by the board, we will contact that person and let them know. And kind of work with them to get evidence of the CE course that we are fairly confident that the Board of Psychology would accept. So we do that on the front end so that if a person is audited, that there will be a package that the board gets from us rather than the individual psychologists having to send in all their individual certificates. Now, your staff does review them. And if there are questions then about certain ones, sometimes the staff will contact my staff and ask a question, and we're able to provide clarification sometimes about what kind of approval that organization has, or answer a question about anything that's inconsistent. Sometimes people make mistakes on the dates. Sometimes a certificate doesn't have a signature, and we can answer questions and sort of verify that the course, in fact, was. Sometimes there are courses that were offered by some of our approved providers, and sometimes they're our courses, and we can certainly answer questions about that.
Thank you. Dr. Emus, does that answer your question?
Yes, I wanted to add something, though. I had an amazing experience. I sent in, I usually have a lot more than 36 hours, and I scan them in, and they come in a PDF. And I got a notification from the person at CPA Banking who was reviewing those, and apparently the APA notice for psychologists had been on the other side of the certificate. And when I was scanning them in, I just scanned the front side. They caught that. So this is how precise they are. Thank you for that precision. That is much appreciated. And I got contacted immediately on that and was able to clear that up. But this was very, very helpful, and it's very accurate. So I'm sure that anything and efficient that the CPA banking CE banking system does is done with great precision and effectiveness, and the Board of Psychology can rely on that. That's my personal experience.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Winkleman, you have a comment?
Yes, Dr. Winkleman, you've been unmuted.
Yes, thank you. I had one other question, which is I think part of the angst that Dr. Emus is referring to is not just the amount of the fine, but the fact that any citation and fine would be public information. So my question, and I think this is probably for Mr. McGuire, is it mandated under the current regulations and laws that the citation and fine be public information? Or is that something that could potentially be changed? Again, I'm thinking that the level of anxiety about this and questions about this is going to substantially increase with it as people get adjusted to the continuing professional development when that's instigated. But briefly, my question is that something that could be changed, the public nature of the citation and fine?
Mr. McGuire?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about the answer. I mean, my inclination is it would have to be either statutory or regulatory change. It's not something the board could just, or board staff could just change here as we sit here. But with putting that issue aside for now, I mean, it's still subject to California Public Records Act without some more authority to make it exempt from disclosure under the California Public Records Act.
And I'll just add that in the board's last sunset review, which was authored by the Business and Professions Committee, that we added 2934.1 of the Business and Professions Code, which is the information that we post on our website. And item E under that code section is citations issued by the board. shall be posted for 5 years from the date of issuance. So that is something that certainly could be changed. It would just have to be through the legislature. And that was something that went through in our last sunset review.
Dr. Winkleman, does that answer your question?
Yes, in terms of it's a regulation, so if that were to change, it would mean a regulatory change. My other question for clarification is, so I think what Ms. McCochran was saying is that if somebody corrects any deficiency, if it's even a week after the due date, that would automatically be a citation and fine. In other words, if I understand correctly, there's flexibility if your license has not expired yet, but if there is a correction made, say somebody is missing 2 hours, they miscalculated the date or something, they missed 2 hours, and a week after their licensure, their license was due to renew, they correct it, that's an automatic citation and fine, or is there, am I understanding that correctly?
Things go by like on a case-by-case basis as previously stated, so that would just be something we would have to get more information from. There would be a lot more conversation between the licensee and I before I would recommend a citation and fine, just to get more information on, what happened. I have to look at their renewals, how many hours did they certify that they've completed. Yeah.
So if I were to have certified that I have the 36 credits, and then when you went through on my audit and saw, let's say that 2 of those credits were not from an approved provider, and I somehow that got beyond me and we talked about it, but now my renewal date actually passed previous week. Would that be something that I would be given 60 days to take the 2 other credits in that kind of situation? I know I know you can't make a blanket statement, but is there an opportunity, a possibility that then I might be given that additional 60 days?
No, so you wouldn't be given, the 60 days is for the CE audit when you're notified that you were selected for an audit. So with that, there again, that would be, it's hard to give a blanket statement because then we'd have conversations, because sometimes, that has happened in the past, but in the CE flyer, the course flyer, it was kind of ambiguous, making it seem like it was APA approved, so there's just a lot of factors we'd have to consider. And then I would pull in Jason and Antoinette and see if they're, if I was, or just to review the stuff too, to see what they thought about it as well.
Got it. Does that help, Dr. Winkleman?
I guess I'm still wondering, is there an automatic mandatory citation and fine in that situation that Dr. Harpsheets described? It sounds like no, but I wanted to know, is there an automatic mandatory citation and fine?
This is Jason. Can I add something?
Sure.
All pending citation and fines come through me for review and approval prior to issuance of the citation. So after Ms. McCochran does all of her due diligence in auditing and reaching out to the licensee on any pending CE units, she prepares a document with everything attached and provides it to me for my review. And then if I determine that it still meets the qualifications or necessitates a citation, I will tell her to go ahead and issue that citation. There are extenuating circumstances which would make that there is not a citation to be issued, and I will give her that instruction as well. In addition, after citations are issued, they have the option to request an informal conference or a formal hearing. Thank you.
Dr. Winkleman, I know it's not a black or white answer, but does that give you a little bit more understanding of the process?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Dr. Linda Crow, I see you would like to make a comment.
Yes, hi. I know that this is sort of taking on the color of beating a dead horse here, but I want to say two things. First, I'm glad to hear, and I think our members and your licensees are will be glad to know that there is flexibility in terms of looking at each individual person's reason for not meeting their CE requirements. Here's a question that I guess I should know this, but if we could just get clarification. Couple of questions. Well, just one. If a person is audited and they turn in their CE certificates and they are, let's use the example that Dr. Herbsheets used. Let's say that you're 2 credits short of the 36 credits. Is there an opportunity to remedy that by taking additional coursework and submitting that to the board so that you are given an opportunity to either provide additional certificates or to make up those credits?
And
if I can start to answer this one and then actually go ahead, Dr. Harpsheets. I interrupted. I apologize.
I was going to add to that example, I mean, just to clarify that when this is done, in my example, my renewal date had passed. This was not prior to the renewal date, because we are doing these audits in arrears after the renewal date.
Correct.
Okay.
And so just to add to that, we have a requirement of 36 hours of continuing education right now. And this is the process that we have in place until continuing professional development hopefully becomes our reality in the next calendar year. So in the meantime, we have this very clear, you have 9 live hours required of you, and the remaining hours can be done online and not in a virtual live setting. If the hours are submitted after the renewal period, the individual is not in compliance with the law. So that part is very black and white. And it's not a matter of we're trying to be fair or flexible. That if someone is in compliance or they're not in compliance with the 36 hours within their 2-year time frame, that's a violation. What we decide to do with that is where we get into the case-by-case mitigating circumstance scenario. So was that person taking care of a loved one who was terminal? These are some of the stories that I hear, and I'm very sympathetic. And so whether that person's in violation or not, I still have the opportunity to hear what that person was going through at that time that did not allow for them to take coursework during that 2-year period. And then I can do an educational letter, which has no fine associated with it, and does not go on the license lookup. I can give them a citation for whatever amount is deemed appropriate given the violation, their history of violations with the board, etc. And then that would be posted on the board's website for 5 years. So there is a spectrum of decision in that process, but the black and white answer is if someone's in violation and they haven't completed 36 hours in 2 years, it's a violation, period.
Okay, Dr. Linda Crow, did that help to answer your question?
Yes, and I think all of this is helpful when we get questions. You know, I like to be able to give a precise answer, and I think that is the answer that I would have given, that the audits are done about a licensing period that has most likely already passed, and you didn't meet your credits. This is why we you know, when we ran the MCEP program, we actually sent reminder letters to licensees to say, your license is coming up in 6 months. Have you met your, you know, have you met your CE requirements? Because it looks like you have not. So we don't get to do that anymore because we don't track it in the way we used to. But I do like to be able to say to people, you got to get your credits in order before it's time, because you don't have it. You can't go back and make up what you didn't do in the past. So I think it's helpful to have these kind of precise answers that make it more clear. And I think that helps the licensees know what the expectations are, which you know that I totally agree that they should know. Let's stipulate to that, but we still get a lot of questions. And so I'm appreciative of the clarification on a few of these issues.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I don't see any other public comments. Madam Moderator, could you please close the comment box?
Of course, it's closed.
Okay. I would like us to take a 5-minute break before we move to our next item, which may take some time. So restroom break or snack break. It is 11:46. So if we could just take 5 minutes and come back. I will see you back in 5 minutes.
Of course. Sheets.
Here.
Nystrom.
Here.
Tate.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our next agenda item is number 8. And this is requesting, ASPPB requesting feedback from us. And this is something we will present to the board at our next board meeting. And so this is feedback from our committee regarding what our thoughts are about allowing our people applying for licensure in the state in California to also take the EPPP at the time that they are applying for licensure, the EPPP2, I should say, at the time they are applying for licensure in California, if the EPPP2, as it is now, is not required in our state. We have the survey in attachment B, and so perhaps we can just go question by question and discuss this among the committee members. If Ms. Sorick or Mr. McGuire would, or perhaps Ms. Chung would like to add information that could be helpful to us in that process, that would be great. And then we will also take public comment. So let's start with number 3, question number 3. I will read it so members of the public can hear. If not required for licensure in your jurisdiction, would your jurisdiction be interested in optionally authorizing candidates to take the EPPP Part 2 skills at the candidate's request? So I'm not sure if we can answer that just yet, but what do you think, Ms. Nystrom and Dr. Tate?
This is Ms. Nystrom. I guess one of the questions I had is, I was interested in just kind of getting thoughts on what the upside is, or if if a candidate chooses not to take it, would there be any penalty down the road? Well, not penalty down the road, but how would it benefit them to take it versus, if they delay or not take it?
Well, a couple things come to mind, and anybody else can also answer. If this particular candidate applying for licensure in California subsequently would like to move to a state that does require the EPPP Part 2, they will be prepared and not have to take it at that point. And if we did optionally authorize them to take it, they would be taking it at a point in the licensing process that is that's probably maybe optimal for them. It perhaps might, I'm not sure, give them a better chance of success in taking it. So it gives them options down the road.
So this is Dr. Tate. The wording of this question, it doesn't feel like it'd be a negative to say yes, because it's asking us if we're interested and optionally authorize the candidate. So, for me, there's not a negative there for me.
Right. Okay, let's move on to number 4, and recognizing what you're saying, Dr. Tate. So, and we'll say that we answered yes. Do we have the authority to authorize a candidate for licensure to take an examination which is not a requirement for licensure in your jurisdiction? So I would like to defer to Mr. McGuire or Ms. Sorick to answer that question for us. Do we have that authority?
No, this is Mr. McGuire. I don't believe we do. It's sort of a logical fallacy to sort of say we're going to require someone to take something that or rather, we have the authority to require someone to take something that we don't require. So maybe I misworded the question, but I think that was the question. Is it possible to put the questions up on the screen so we can kind of see exactly what they ask?
Oh, Madam Moderator, can we do that?
This is the moderator, and I did load the meeting materials packet. So if the questions are in that packet, then we can switch to that, and you can guide us to the page.
Yes.
Okay.
I have the combined, Mr. Glass-Steagall, I have the combined one up. Do you? And
I think it's page 36.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay, so now we are looking at number 4. Do we have the authority, since it's not a requirement? I guess the question that comes to mind for me is, if I was applying for licensure in California, but also might be applying for licensure in another state that did require it, I could take that. I could take the EPPP Part 2. And it would not have nothing to do with my application for licensure in California, right?
Yeah, that's the discussion we've had surrounding this question. And I think the answer to the question for 4 is just no, we don't have the authority to authorize them to, but at the same time, we're not prohibiting them from taking it either.
Right. Okay. So then could you answer number 5 for us, if it's not required? And would we have to change our regulations? I guess if it's not required, why would we do it, right?
Yeah, the only thing on this is right now our regulations do talk about the EPPP. They don't specify whether Part 1 or Part 2 is required. So it's somewhat depends on how they title it, whether it's clear enough in our regulations that only the EPPP Part 1 is the EPPP, and the EPPP Part 2 skills is, some other title, because we just wouldn't want the license or applicants to be confused and think they have to take Part 2 when they do not. So something for us to kind of think about and run down is, what is the real title of of EPPP Part 2 skills.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's too similar to just what it says in our reg, which is EPPP, do we want to make a change that could just be clarifying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. We'll leave it at that for now. And then there's a question of, what that reg change might look like, whether it's a Section 100 or a more standard reg package. And that depends on the specificity of the title of the new Part 2.
Okay. I would just add that the task force the board has established to talk about the EPPP Part 2 will be meeting in October and present information to the board in November. So it's, I haven't seen the agenda for that yet, but just as a piece of information. Okay. So maybe Ms. Chung could respond to number 6. If it's not a requirement, could we include that the candidates' EPPP Part 2 results in their file? Do we have the capacity to do that? Would that be some kind of how would we have to change if that's the case?
May I defer this to Mr. Glass-Steagall regarding this question?
Sure. Mr. Glass-Steagall?
Hi, this is Jason. The way we communicate with ASPBB is digitally through data transfers from Breeze through different programs. And that's how we submit eligibility and receive data. So could it be done? I assume it could be a similar process, but without requiring it for licensure, would it be something that we would include into the process? That is what, without knowing without having the absolute information, I wouldn't be 100% confident that it was something that we should do, because if we're importing the information, potentially we are grabbing it for a purpose, and that information is usually linked to some type of open transaction, and the open transaction is utilized as well as like scores to approve them for licensure. So I'm not an expert in the inner workings of Breeze and importing information without a transaction for the purpose of licensure. So I apologize that I can't speak to that too much, but that is how we currently receive EPPP scores and how we send eligibility and receive scores. So I am confident that could be done. I just don't know on whether or not it would have to have some kind of link to an open transaction or something like that. Otherwise, Breeze doesn't know to grab it, basically, I think.
Yeah. So in a sense, if it was not required, you're saying that there'd be this piece of information sitting there that was superfluous in a way, and that could be a problem for Breeze because it's not related to a particular transaction.
Exactly. That's kind of my initial thought of, well, if we were telling Breeze to grab this information or sending it in, Breeze is going to say, where do I put it and why am I putting it there? But that's my limited knowledge of the Breeze functionality and that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so for the committee members, in question number 7, what are your impressions of, would a person who failed the EPPP Part 2, but that was not a requirement for California licensure, what are your impressions of that question? Would it impact their their California licensure or any future disciplinary action? Would that be a factor that would be considered?
Hi, this is Ms. Nystrom. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I don't know how it could be if it wasn't something. I don't think the candidate took it and failed, that it could be used in the action. But
And I agree. I don't think there's no way we could do that.
It would seem irrelevant and unfair to be considered. Is that what you're thinking?
If we don't require it in our state, we cannot put weight in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I would agree.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's get to then number 9. Would you be concerned if another jurisdiction optionally authorizes candidates? So this would be if we had someone applying for California licensure, but we happen to know that another state, that they could go there, not apply for licensure in that other state, but have an opportunity to take the EPPP Part 2, even though they're not applying for licensure there. Would that be a concern of ours? Dr. Tate, Ms. Nystrom?
I'm thinking.
I think, okay, why would we care?
That's what I'm thinking. Does this have any bearing for us?
I'm with both of you on that. I just was a little bit more time.
Yeah. We try to think about like, okay, so why would it be a problem as long as they meet the requirements that we have established for licensure? It partly makes me think about, well, if somebody wanted to apply for some other kind of designation that would help them in their professional standing.
This is Ms. Nystrom. How would that actually apply? I'd be concerned if another jurisdiction optionally authorizes candidates to take the EPP. I guess I'm not even sure how that would actually apply to a California.
Well, okay, let's say if I was applying for licensure in California and the EPPP Part 2 is not a requirement for licensure. So therefore, California has decided in order to be able to practice and have consumers protected, I just need to pass the EPPP, the original EPPP Part 1, and then the jurisprudence exam in California. But just because I might be thinking later on that I would want to move to a state that does require the EPPP Part 2, but I don't want to apply yet for licensure there, I could apply, I could go to, say, the nearest state that optionally authorizes me to take it and take it just in case for the future. So does that example give you an idea of how that could be useful to me as a candidate?
Yes, so just to make sure that I understand. So if I'm a California resident, I take the EPPP here, but I don't take the if I'm in another state, I wouldn't have to take the EPPP again, correct? But I could just take the Part 2. Right?
I'm sorry, part of your question got cut out. Are you saying that if you were applying for a license in another state that required Part 2, you would have to go take it there? But let's say you're applying in California and you think in the future you might be wanting to move to another state, but you're not going to apply for licensure there right now. So you might say, well, I think I'll just take that in this other state that would allow me to do it, even though I'm not applying for licensure there. Then the question is, would we be concerned about you doing that?
guess with that example, which I really appreciate, thank you. I think I would lean towards no. I wouldn't be concerned that that's.
But yeah, Dr. Tate.
I don't think I would be concerned unless there's something I'm missing that's glaring, and I'm open to that comment.
Yeah, I think we'll hear from Dr. Horn probably in the public comment section. And she may be able to clarify that for us. If there's something we might be missing, why would we be concerned if the person has, there's plenty of exams out there that people choose to take, but as long as they've met our requirements. But we'll hear from Dr. Horn, I think. Okay, so for number 10, we're not sure. I would think that the answer to that is it doesn't seem to be a concern as long as they have met our requirements for licensure. Okay, number 11, do we have any policies or rules about the EPPP that we should consider when making a decision about allowing candidates to optionally take the EPPP Part 2? So maybe we could get some guidance from Mr. McGuire here.
Yeah, this kind of just is a repeat of the comments I previously made when I was looking at this issue. We have 16 CCR section 1388, which specifically requires the EPPP, as I said, and it doesn't specify whether that's part 1 or 2. So we may wish to consider that as a regulatory change to specify which we want, so that it's not ambiguous. We also notify them when they qualify for the EPPP. As referenced earlier, that's in the same section, 16 CCR 1388. That's mentioned a couple times, so those would be just additional places that we might wish to do a reg change. So the guidance I received from our reg attorney, Heather, who's not here, would be basically that regarding whether it could be a section 100 change or a regular reg package, the section 100 being a faster process, sort of technical change to just the legal name of something, for example. So she said that if ASPPB is changing the name of the exam to be part 1 or part 2, something similar, well, then we could attempt a section 100 change to simply update the name of the required exam in our regulations. She said it would be a little bit of a persuasive sell at the Office of Administrative Law, but she's willing to do so if it would save the board time and money, which sounds like it would. However, if the exam is changed in such a way that the board is then left at a decision point whether it needs to decide whether to adopt part 1 and 2 or just part 1, which it sounds like we may be going down that road, then that's more of a discretionary choice that the board is making, and therefore it would not qualify as a section 100 change. So I can talk more about that with folks offline because it's sort of an internal decision, but just to flag it for Antoinette and others who will be working on that later on. But yeah, that's really the only section that we have in our regulations which discuss EPPP. So it would be, it's obviously a policy decision at some point for the board to make whether they do want to require part 2, but then it's sort of just kind of tracking what ASPPB is doing regarding the title of the exam and whether it's sufficiently clear that part 2 is separate from part 1, or if the whole thing is just now called the EPPP, then we do need to probably make a conforming change to specify that for our applicants.
Okay.
So Dr. Harbsheets, just to take a quick step back to put in context the question and kind of a little bit of history about this policy with the board and the current committee members who weren't part of the board at that time. Originally, when ASPBB presented the Part 2 as the skills-based exam, the question the board had was whether this was the new national exam. Was the new national exam going to be considered part 1 and part 2? And at that time, ASPBB said this is an opt-in part 2. So the national exam right now is just the part 1. If the national exam were to become both part 1 and part 2, then I think the section 100 would be an appropriate venue or avenue to take, because the ASPBB would have identified the national exam as being both parts, not just part 1. But because we're in the situation where right now the national exam is only the part 1, then the question is how to proceed with allowing for or being concerned about others, other jurisdictions having California candidates apply to take the EPPP, because if at some point ASPBB were ever to perhaps make it compulsory for part 1 and part 2, those individuals would be kind of one step ahead of the game. So I just want to throw that in the mix, add that context. And the last communication that we had with ASPBB in our letter was that there were some concerns about the cost, and there were some concerns about how the exam was going to do when it entered the beta testing phase. And in the meantime, we have engaged an occupational analysis of the part 2, whether or not the board is authorized to allow its applicants to take this. We're still reviewing it as a board because we were reviewing the part 1 already. So we said, while we're reviewing the part 1, let's also review the part 2. And that way, if it becomes a decision for the board to make, they can make an informed decision at that time. So in the meantime, sorry, I'm doing the little Cliff Notes version of the timeline. We reestablished the ad hoc committee to be members of the board to kind of review where ASPBB is in the adopting states, the occupational analysis that will have been completed by the fall, and then what kind of recommendation that committee would make to the board. And then there is also on the outside the decision of whether ASPBB in the near future would make the exam compulsory or not. So I just wanted to add a little context to the discussion, and thank you for entertaining that discussion.
That was really helpful. Thank you so much for giving us that background and giving us a perspective from which to look at these items, these considerations. So committee members, anything else you would like to add or ask a question before we open it up for public comment?
I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Not for me. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Madam Moderator, could you please open the box for public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on this agenda item, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions for your reference. All right, Dr. Horn would like to make a comment. So Dr. Horn, I'll let you know when you've been unmuted. And Dr. Horn, you've been unmuted.
Thanks. I actually was going to wait. I wasn't planning on commenting at all, but I would like to give you some history as well. Let me just say this. I'm a California licensee. I was on the board, but I also work for ASPPB. So I'd like to maybe give y'all a little history about why this survey came out. The ASPPB board was approached by Louisiana, the state of Louisiana. They haven't adopted the EPPP2 at this point, but they want to give, because in order to, let me back up. In order to take the EPPP, any one or two, you have to be a candidate for licensure somewhere. And so they wanted to be able to offer it while they, to their candidates for licensure once they pass the EPPP Part 1. In case, so that those people could have it essentially in their portfolio, the scores would be kept with ASPPB, and if those people ever moved, they would be able to just use their EPPP Part 2 score for, moving to a jurisdiction that does use the EPPP2 or did use the EPPP2. So there were some concerns that were raised by the ASPPB board, including test security. But the board really wanted to get a sense of if they allow this, first of all, would jurisdictions like this option for their candidates for licensure? Second, would it be possible, given whatever rules there are in each of the jurisdictions? So that's why the survey, and I hadn't read the questions on the survey till this meeting, and I can see why some of them are confusing. But that's why this was essentially sent out to all the boards. We just want a sense of, is it possible in your jurisdiction? Would this be something you'd like to offer your candidates for licensure? And again, I'm going to say people have to be candidates for licensure in order to take the any form of the EPPP. That said, to follow up on what Ms. Thorick was talking about, the ASPPB board is also looking, this is separate from this survey piece. That's one decision they'll be making as a result of the feedback from jurisdictions. But then the next thing, in January or February, at their first board meeting of 2022, ASPPB plans to consider whether continue having the adoption of the EPPP2 be a rolling adoption like it is now, or whether they're going to say, as of this date in the future, the EPPP consists of two parts. So a date certain, at that point, that will be the EPPP2. But as Ms. Thorick said, that decision hasn't been made. It won't be made for a few months. So right now, the national exam is the EPPP. Once states adopt it, in the states or jurisdictions, I want to say, because we include Canada as well, once jurisdictions adopt both the Part 1 and Part 2, they still call it the EPPP, but it has two parts. So there's the EPPP Part 1, which is knowledge, and the EPPP Part 2, which is skills. And that's how it's identified. So you're right about the weirdness of the title right now, because soon the EPPP knowledge only is going to be called EPPP Part 1 knowledge. So there's some confusion right now, and that may need a change, like you were saying. So that's all I have to say. Just letting you know more about that unless you have a specific question for me. But I hope that kind of clears up where this comes from, why it's being asked, and then that's the spirit why under which it's being these questions are being asked.
Thank you, Dr. Horn. I think that was very helpful because the questions were a little confusing, and to understand that background helps to give us a good perspective along with what Ms. Sorick shared with us. I see Dr. Linda Crow would like to make a comment.
Yes. So Dr. Linda Crow, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. Yes, that was helpful because it was a little puzzling as to why this survey came about, how it came about. So that was very helpful from Dr. Horn. I guess I'm a little, I was very glad to hear the discussion from the committee members because it seems to me that it's an odd question to consider about why the Board of Psychology in California would even want to or need to or even should weigh in on whether a person wanted to take the EPPP Part 2 if it's not required in the state of California. I think Dr. Harbsheet's example is a perfect example. There are many reasons why someone might want to take the EPPP Part 2 at the time that they're taking the EPPP because they're younger in their career, they're fresher out of graduate school, and for those of you who are licensed, on the board, you might rather take it then than waiting 10 or 12 years if ASPPB gets around to saying, well, you know what, everybody's going to have to take this. So, whether you want to have to take it 10 years down the road is probably more challenging than thinking about just taking both parts and getting it done with. So I'm a little confused about why the Board of Psychology would even have any standing to weigh in on whether a person would take the EPPP Part 2 if they wanted to. If they qualify to take the EPPP and they wanted to do it. And I think the example given is a perfect example. You might be considering licensure in another state that does require the EPPP2. You might not want to do it right now, but why not? I'm not sure the authority. I don't think I understand the authority piece. The other part that would be a concern, and I was so glad to hear the discussion in the committee, if a person did take the EPPP2, did not pass the EPPP2, the very notion that that would have any influence or even play any role in the licensee's future in California, since it's not even required in California, would seem like a very dangerous road to go down. And I think we would certainly say to that question, it should not have any influence. Shouldn't be in the file, shouldn't have any influence. I guess I'm not quite clear about ASPPB's role in keeping this information. It would seem simpler to me, but I know it's not simple, but that a person should be allowed to take the EPPP2 and that ASPPB would keep those results. And then a person would be able to go and say, I took it, and here's when I took it, and now I need it. So those are my comments. I think the part about the most dangerous piece that I saw in this was just the thought that someone would take it, fail it, and then that this board would have any way of using that against a person. And I would strongly object to that, and was happy to see that that was the conclusion of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Linda Crow. Dr. Emus.
All right, Marilyn, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. I have two things then, piggybacking on what Dr. Linda Crow said in regards to CDCR. We have part of our policy, hiring policy, credentialing policy, to be credentialed to work as a psychologist. At CDCR, we have to fill out a form, and it has to be obviously true, everything we write. and there is a question that asks, have you ever failed a licensing exam? I think that's almost the exact wording of that question. That would make it difficult. Obviously, we can change policy, but I don't really see any necessity of going through all of that when we don't require it. Somewhere down the line, also over time, there might be something that crops up that's deleterious to somebody's career because of that. These are the kind of things I worry about. Maybe I'm overly worried, but I know how we view these facts and the answers that people give when they're credentialed. It's part of the peer review process, very, very strict. So that would worry me. The other thing that I originally wanted to ask about is the timeline we have now on this review that's being undertaken for the EPPP 2 in regards to its occupational coherence and relevance to what we need in California as far as skill is concerned, the content validity, if you want to. Do we know when this review is going to be finished and when they come back to the table to make a decision, or is there not a timeline, a deadline on that yet?
It's my understanding, Ms. Sorick said that we would have that by fall for the board to consider. Is that the case, Ms. Sorick?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And so just, we will have that information. The ad hoc committee that Ms. Sorick referred to is meeting in October and will present some information to the board at the board's November meeting. Correct me if I'm inaccurate about that, Ms. Sorick.
The only difference, yes, that is correct. However, for the survey feedback, this committee is the committee that is looking at providing that feedback to the board, because there's an August 31st deadline for ASPBB to get the survey feedback, which would allow for our board to provide final recommendation on survey input by August 27th board meeting.
Okay, so we will present to the full board at the August meeting the information, the feedback on the survey, and it's the ad hoc committee that will present a recommendation to the board about whether or not California should adopt the EPPP 2 at the November meeting. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
And there may be just one other caveat to that. If the board of directors, as Dr. Horn mentioned, is not meeting until the beginning of the year, the board may want to consider putting off a recommendation until the board of directors considers whether or not there will be a rolling exam, or if they're renaming the national exam as part 1 and 2.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that meeting, I think Dr. Horn mentioned, is in February of 2022. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. So, okay. I see no other public comments. Madam Moderator, could you please close the comment box?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I've closed it.
Okay, thank you. The last item on the for the open portion of the meeting is any recommendations for agenda items for future licensure committee meetings. And
Dr.
so
Tate, just sorry to interrupt. Just for purposes of just making sure staff knows what the survey recommendations are to the board, do we have set answers, or just checking in with staff I know there seemed to be consensus around quite a few of the questions, but I just want to make sure staff feels comfortable that we have solid recommendations or answers to provide to the board as the committee report.
So you're asking this question of the staff?
Correct. And then I guess as a follow-up to the committee members.
Okay. I see Dr. Tate's microphone unmuted. Oh, now it's muted again. Okay. So I don't.
Hi, this is Ms. Chang. It would be helpful if we can go through the question once again, just to make sure that we have the correct recommendation for our reference, so that we can be better prepared.
Yeah, and if I may offer a suggestion, just for purposes of making it official, why don't we go through each of the questions just one by one, talk about that consensus, make sure that all the committee members are agreed and staff members are clear on the recommendation, and then at the end, at the conclusion of all 12 questions, if we could just have a motion for the committee to adopt the answers to the survey as discussed.
Okay.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. So number one, we obviously represent California. And I think this would probably be.
Can we put the questions back up again?
Oh, yeah, good idea. Thank you. Great. So we have to go to the previous page on the questions. So we start at number one. And so number two, since we will be presenting this information to the board, and it will be the board that will actually give the final approval for the answers, would that be the board chairperson who would be writing that response?
I think that's appropriate.
Okay. Okay. So number three, my understanding was that, and please committee members jump in if you disagree, my understanding was we said we would be interested in optionally authorizing. We didn't seem to have a reason for saying no.
Correct.
Right, okay. And number four, we don't have the authority because it's not a California requirement. And number five is we would have, it depends. I mean, we would have to possibly make a change depending on how it was worded. Is that correct, Mr. McGuire?
That's correct. There's no it depends answer for number five. So, I mean, maybe we say yes just to be safe.
Yeah, okay. And number six, well, we're not really sure of that answer because Mr. Glass-Steagall shared with us, we don't know if we could include that in the Breeze file if there was not a transaction associated with it.
We just leave it blank.
I would just add that not only is it a Breeze functionality issue, but we don't have the authority to collect that information. So I would say the answer should be no on that, because because we're not authorizing the exam, we wouldn't have the authorization to collect that information.
Yeah.
And Mr. McGuire can correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems likely.
That makes sense. Do you agree, Mr. McGuire?
I haven't researched that question, but it makes sense, and it's what Ms. Sork's reasoning makes sense. If it's not a requirement, we would be able to include it in the candidate's file. I mean, if we're not even able to collect it, then it wouldn't.
I mean, let's say, for example, someone asked for a Public Records Act request and they asked for information on someone's EPPP Part 2 results. We would have that file, and we we wouldn't have authority to really have that information, but because someone requested it, we would have to redact it, of course, but, you know, include that information conceivably.
Yeah, that's maybe a different question than number 6 is asking, but
It sounds like number 6 is, I mean, if we have to say yes or no, we're just better. It's more no than it is yes.
Right. I tend to agree. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound like the consensus is that we're going to just all of a sudden add part 2 to our candidate file. There's logistical problems, there's potential legal problems with it, so
Right.
it's probably a no.
Okay, so number 7, as a committee, we said no, it would not impact their licensure or future disciplinary action.
That's right.
So number 8, we can skip. Number 9, would we be concerned if another jurisdiction optionally authorizes? My recollection is no, we wouldn't be concerned. And the rationale that we spoke about was that if it's not a requirement for California, there was no reason for us to have a concern. Committee members, does that represent what we talked about?
I think it represents what we talked about. Ms. Stark, does that include any causes you had?
Yeah, I mean, I think that other states have their own law and ethics exam and other requirements. They may have an oral exam still. It's not a concern for California. Only if that candidate comes to apply in California, they would just have to meet our requirements for licensure. So it's not, I guess concern isn't the right word. It would just be, it would be of the prerogative of the board if that person eventually applied for licensure here and met all the requirements that we have.
Part 2 was, and if part 2 is required and they could use that, would that later on, would that be a problem?
You mean
No.
if California required, if we later required part 2? Is that what you're asking?
I would think logistically, if the board were to ever either adopt part 2 or the national exam would change to become part 1 and 2, it would be easier on staff if the person had already taken it because they would have completed one step in the requirement for licensure process. Am I speaking out of turn, Ms. Chung, or would you agree with that?
I would agree with that because existing pathways allowed out-of-state candidates, if they have taken the EPPP somewhere, they are able to request a score transfer. So I am agreeing based on if there will be a similar process for both parts of the scores for both parts to be transferred to us.
Thank you.
Okay. So number 11, this is where we talked about, we probably should answer yes, because it was a matter, Mr. McGuire shared with us, of how would the wording be, what wording does ASPPB develop or use to refer to the tests, and how would that fit with how our regulations are worded? Is that correct? Mr.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good summary.
Yeah. Okay, so that would be answering number 12. And do we have any additional comments? I don't remember hearing any.
No, I don't think we have any.
Okay. Ms. Nystrom, do you agree?
I do, and I am happy to make the motion that we are off the survey we just went over.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Mike, could you please call the roll?
We just to be complete, we might as well do another round of public comment or open it up for an additional public comment now that there's a motion on the table.
Okay, thank you. Madam Moderator, could you please open the comment box?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions. All right, I see no request for public comment at this time. Madam Chairperson, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Please do.
Okay, it's closed.
Okay. Okay, could we have the vote, please?
Harpsheet,
Aye.
Nystrom,
Aye.
Tate,
Aye.
motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, we will then move on to recommendations for agenda items for future licensure committee meetings. Committee members, do you have items that you would like us to add?
I do not at this time. Thank you.
Then for me, Riker, thank you.
Okay. Let's please open the Q&A panel for any public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on this agenda item, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions. All right, Dr. Winkleman would like to make a comment. So, Dr. Winkleman, you've been unmuted.
Hi, thank you. Elizabeth Winkleman from the California Psychological Association. Again, I wanted to request that you consider putting on the agenda going back to the issue of the public posting of the citations and fines. I reviewed the section in the law that refers to the public posting on the website, and it looks like to me that it's permissive, not mandatory. It says the board may post on its website, and then it has a bunch of lists of things. And I would like to request that you consider discussing making issues that are really administrative in nature and could in some cases be a very minor infraction, such as messing up 2 hours of CE credits, something that would not be publicly posted on the Breeze website. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay.
All right, I see no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's been closed.
Okay. The licensure committee will now meet in closed session to discuss and consider qualifications for licensure. And just a reminder that at the conclusion of the closed session, we will only reconvene to adjourn the meeting. Thank you to members of the public and everyone who helped to make this a vibrant and useful meeting.
Thank you, Dr.